Hello and welcome back to the queerest podcast telling the fiercest stories. This is Queer Talker and I'm Ben Cicchetti. This week I sit down with stand-up comic and social media influencer Mark Bittlestone.
Maybe I had like a nascent awareness of my sort of burgeoning sexuality, but I was like, whatever happens, I do not want to be gay. And then, whoops.
Okay.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly.
Spoiler alert.
Totally. But I spent sort of 10 years in the closet, afraid to be who I was. So it's, you forget how far you've come if you're then happy to do loads of stupid reels about it. My mum died a week before my A-levels, and then my dad died like 2 weeks before my university finals. I was like, guys, can we do we have to? Having, you know, Free Palestine in my bio and speaking out about it a lot was probably meant I was a sort of no-go for quite a lot of brands. But you know, I think when stuff's important to you and you look back and you think like, how could I have done nothing?
Mark, we will break the ice with our queer panic rapid fire set of questions. You just respond with the first thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with, what was the first album you ever owned?
I think it was White Flag by Dido.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. bought it from HMV in Wimbledon. It's a banger. It's a real banger.
Yeah, that's a classic. I love that. If you had to lip sync for your life, what song would you choose?
Oh, maybe Left Outside Alone by Anastasia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I
That
know.
would be a lot.
I think I know that pretty well. Yeah.
Okay. Who was a childhood celebrity crush of yours?
Orlando Bloom as Legolas in Lord of the Rings. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Two Towers when he slides down on the shield. Like, yeah. I can.
Yeah.
Real energy there.
Yes, please. Yeah.
What is your biggest red flag?
Maybe guys who take themselves too seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that.
I feel like you couldn't date a comedian and then try and take yourself too seriously, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be fun. So
yeah, it's just a bit. It's like, come on, we're on a rock spinning through space. Just chill out.
That's fair. Speaking of dating, do you have an embarrassing dating story that you're willing to share with our listeners?
Do I have an embarrassing dating story? I mean, I must do. I've cut dates pretty short. I don't know what the shortest you've done or people have done. I've done like a 40-minute. Yeah.
Wow.
I was
Where
like,
you just knew this isn't right.
yeah, I was like, I don't know what, like, this is not, we obviously haven't done our due diligence because this is not working. This is not working. I've also like, and I think this maybe speaks to the sort of the incestuousness or the small size of the sort of, you know, London's sort of, you know, urban sort of going out queer population or whatever. But like, I've, yeah, been on dates where like it's emerged that like we've basically slept with each other's exes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a turn off.
Yeah, it actually was. It was a bit of a dead end because yeah.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm not missing the dating life. It's interesting.
Totally.
What is your favorite queer movie or TV show?
The Queer as Folk was so great because it's so all the characters are so vile. Do you know what I mean? I think like I understand the move towards like positive queer narratives, but positive stuff isn't that funny a lot of the time. And so yeah, Queer as Folk is great. But do you know what though? I only watched Brokeback Mountain like last year.
Okay.
And I think, funnily enough, the reason it took me so long to watch it is because growing up, that was such like a byword for like you're gay. Like at school,
Yeah.
it was always like, oh, what did you watch this weekend? Brokeback Mountain. So I think I avoided it for ages just because it was so laced with like, you know, the sort of homophobia and it felt almost like a cliche,
Yeah.
even though obviously when you watch it, it's a completely beautiful movie. And
Yeah.
I was in just floods of tears.
Okay. Confession, I've never watched it. Like, I don't know why. I don't
Ben,
know if it's for the same reason, but I
you,
now feel like I have to do some homework and
yeah,
I will watch it by the time this episode comes out.
how can you host this podcast and not have seen
I
Brokeback
know.
Mountain?
I know the shame of it all.
Mm,
Okay, I will fix that. Who is your ultimate queer icon?
um, maybe Ian McKellen. Good
Mm,
guy, good actor. Um, does lots of. He's always on marches. He was at roast the other day.
okay. Nice.
I mean, I wasn't there, but I saw the photo. Um, yeah, yeah. Let's give a
I think that's a
shout
good
out to
choice.
Surian.
Yeah, Sir Ian. Well, speaking of people, who is one person? This is such a selfish question. Who is one person you would like to hear me interview on this podcast? Don't say Sir Ian McKellen because I think that might be a stretch.
Maybe Alan Carr.
He'd be
He'd be
amazing. He'd
amazing.
be amazing. Yeah.
He'd be completely amazing. Um, yeah, to discuss afterwards. But have you emailed Lee Peart or had Lee on?
I haven't, no.
Lee's a fantastic comic. Um, and Lee's also really good mates with Alan, and they're starting a podcast soon. So you should get Lee on
Okay.
in his own right because he's fantastic. But then
Yeah.
sort of be like, Lee, do you fancy recommending Lee?
You had such a good experience.
Yeah, yeah. Lee, we did get you on because we wanted you, but also.
Yeah. You happen to be friends.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
It's a good shout. What is your proudest moment of your career so far?
Um, I just did in May, I did the Kilkenny Comedy Festival,
Mm,
which is like invite only, just met like all the acts. It's like maybe all of Ireland and Northern Ireland's like biggest comedy acts. And it's just like staggering the talent on display. So to be invited to do
mm,
that was incredible. Um, so maybe that, I think, and maybe just like performing at all these clubs like Top Secret and the Comedy Store and the Frog and Bucket and the Stand, where like, you know, I remember the first time I did a lot of them, the first time I did almost all of them was in their like gong show capacity,
right.
which if listening audience aren't familiar with, it's like a lot of a lot of the way into some of these clubs is you have these gong shows where you go up and basically you have to survive 5 minutes, and if the audience don't think you're funny, they'll literally gong you off.
Oh, that's
Um,
brutal.
so pretty brutal. But yeah, so I remember, you know, with all of those clubs, that's how I started. And you're there and you're literally so nervous and scared. So then to be, you know, to be doing full paid weekends at those clubs, you're like, wow, what a kind of pinch me moment
Yeah.
from where I was. I think that's kind of cool. Um, I think also another nice one is when people say like people sort of come up to you and they're like, "Oh, I love your stuff," and also maybe I kind of like, I don't know, that you're just really easy in your identity as a queer person and putting it out there. Because yeah, certainly, you know, obviously we've all been on a journey, but I spent sort of 10 years in the closet, you know, um, afraid to be who I was. So it's you forget how far you've come if you're then happy to do loads of stupid reels about it.
That's fair. That's fair. No, I think that's incredible. Um, final of our Queer Panic questions. What is one word you would use to describe your childhood?
Oh, my childhood was really lovely. Sorry, these are meant to be quick fire, aren't they?
It's all good.
I haven't got,
They rarely are.
I haven't been quick fire at all. Do you know, my childhood was lovely, but I think it speaks sort of volumes that even in I grew up in like a liberal part of a liberal country, like Southwest London, in the 90s, but it was still I still felt the need to stay in the closet for like a decade, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can explore that a bit more because I'm super curious. I always have this, as long-term listeners will know, I have this theory that to understand an LGBTQ plus person as an adult, which we all claim to be, you first need to understand them as a young person. So,
Mm,
what should I know about you as a young person to understand the Mark that sits in front of me today?
yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a child of privilege for sure. Like, I went to a private school in Southwest London, grew up in like a big house in Wimbledon, and not just like material privilege, but my parents were lovely and emotionally available and help with homework and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I think it's crucial to foreground any of our discussions with that understanding. Um, but yeah, I think also that, like, notwithstanding that, the 90s were, well, I don't know what a good time is, but like, homophobia was just still just an acceptable language
Yeah.
in in our house, which again, I say like, it was weird because I guess my parents, they voted for Tony Blair. They would have considered themselves liberal, and yet, like, the word "gay" was just was every day as
Yeah.
as an insult, and like a few things they said that made it clear that like they would be okay if one of us were gay, but it was not ideal.
Right, right.
And then yeah, I went to like all boys schools where yeah, again, like I think the sad thing is this is a phrase I often use, like probably like my like the earliest really the earliest one of the earliest memories of like what I wanted to be or what type of person I wanted to be, maybe like age 7 or 8, like was I don't want to be gay. Like that
Right.
that is such a crystal clear that had been drummed into me from like the playground and like home, like all of my points of reference were straight, and then everyone knew that like being gay was just this like dreadful, embarrassing, awful thing.
Mm,
So kind of before I even had an idea of what I wanted to do with my life, like lawyer or astronaut or whatever, it was like I know, and maybe I had like a nascent awareness of my sort of
yeah.
burgeoning sexuality, but I was like, whatever happens, I do not want to be gay. And then, whoops.
Okay.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
Yeah,
Spoiler
exactly.
alert.
Totally, totally.
I guess with that mindset, then, do you remember the first gay LGBTQ plus queer person you just kind of became aware of, and how did that make you feel, knowing that you had this kind of real urge and desire to not be gay?
Yeah, we had this really sweet gay couple who lived down our road, Philip and Blair. And again, this is the kind of contradiction I mean with my parents. Like, my parents were really good friends with them. And my dad I do remember my dad saying like how unfair it is that someone's sexuality, which they don't choose, he was very aware of that, can be the basis for discrimination. And yeah,
Mm,
as I say, like they didn't do anything to stop the word gay being bandied around by my siblings and I as an insult. But
yeah.
yeah, I think we would have Philip and Blair over, but then I think, my siblings, once they had left, there'd be some sort of quite cruel um, comments. So I guess pretty early on, it was like that's weird. That's, not what we really not what my parents are, not what my uncles and aunts are, not
Yeah.
what my not really the model. that we want to be following. But hilariously, my dad was like a very bright guy and super interested in science and stuff, and he became aware of this fact, which you may or may not be aware of, that the more older brothers you have, the likelier you are to be gay. Don't know if
Okay. I
yeah.
didn't know that. How many older brothers do you have?
Well, this is the thing. I have two older brothers, and
Okay.
so I
I've only
remember
got one, so I don't know what happened to me.
fine, fine, fine. Well, no, I mean, it's still your chances are like doubled by
Okay.
each. I mean, obviously they still remain low, but to remember my dad like just raising that as a point of interest at like the dinner table, and then
Looking at you.
my older brother's looking at me and being like, and me being like, yeah, I don't know, guys. Yeah, yeah.
Can't believe everything you read.
That can't be true. Yeah.
Well, then I guess with that feeling, with that exposure of that, knowing a gay couple, but that feeling and that sense that this wasn't the life you wanted and you felt it wasn't the life your family wanted for you. Do you remember the first time you did feel that kind of first awareness of queerness, that you may be gay?
I think like interestingly, as I get older, I think I backdate that to earlier because I didn't have like sexual thoughts about, you know, other boys until I was 14.
Okay.
But like looking back earlier, probably when I was like 11 or 12, I can remember being like, oh, like, this boy in my class is like really, I don't even know how an 11-year-old, thinks, but, or how I thought about them, but like, oh, that boy is really like pretty or good looking, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, probably sort of 10 or 11 maybe, but it still was the period at which I started to be like, oh, like, okay, this is a possibility. And then really, I think 14, sort of 14, 15 was like kind of denial.
Mm.
And then I, I said to myself, I remember I was like, if it's still like this when you're 21, then, then come out. Because I think the idea of it being a phase was still in vogue in like the 2000s.
Yeah.
Um, so I said that to myself, and actually I ended up following that to pretty much the letter. I did come out and I
Okay.
yeah.
Do you remember then, like, you come across, and you mentioned a little bit earlier that people come up to you and say this, you come across as incredibly authentically you. You feel very confident in yourself. Do you remember the first time you did feel authentically yourself? And then when you could bring that authenticity to everything you do?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like, I remember the period of coming out as like an incredibly exciting and happy one. I had, I was at university and I had, for the first like 2 and a bit years there, I had sort of fallen into like a lot of the same patterns that I did at school. Like I played sport and like I was in like the drinking society or whatever. And I was still pretending to be straight. And then I met a guy through a friend who I knew was gay, and I sort of engineered the meeting because he was also really hot. And then he was pretty much the
We've all
first,
been there.
yeah, quite. And yeah, he was pretty much the first person I told, other than like a grinder hookup that earlier that summer, which was a really scary event. But yeah, I remember telling him, and then kind of, me and him sort of, I mean, he was in an open relationship with a guy at the time. And then so me and him sort of, we were like messaging all Christmas and we met up and stuff. And then broke up with his boyfriend and me and him started dating. And then obviously kind of once we started dating, he was like, you got to tell people. And so that was actually really great because it meant I had to tell people really. And he was really, really supportive. Um, and yeah, I definitely remember, this kind of rush or an overwhelming feeling of like, God, thank God, this sort of extraordinary relief. Because yeah, you obviously carried it around with you for a long, long time.
Yeah. I think one of the themes that comes up in your comedy, which I hope you don't mind us discussing, is around loss and grief. Because you've shared that your mum very sadly passed away during your A levels,
Mm.
and then your dad passed away during your university finals.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a formative time in anyone's life. How do you think going through that at that point in time shaped you and your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your family going forward?
Yeah, it was like a wild time, really. I think particularly because my childhood was very privileged and idyllic, and I come from like a sort of middle class set where, you know, um, bad things don't really happen very often, very fortunately.
Yeah.
And on top of those like material privileges, obviously I'm like white and male and cisgendered and straight. Sorry, I'm not straight.
And he's back in the closet.
Freudian slip, yeah. But like, relatively straight passing. So rarely the victim, for example, of homophobia. But
Yeah.
so I think, yeah, my mum dying was sort of my introduction to, when I was 17, introduction to sort of, obviously the bad things can happen. And in a way, um, obviously that is hugely sad, but it's also like, gosh, I guess a privilege in some ways for that to have really been your first, you know, um, experience of that. But kind of during that period, my mum died. I was kind of deeply, for the next sort of 5 years, I guess, like quite upset and depressed about being gay and how to come out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then my dad died. And as you said, it was a bit mad. My mum, the symmetry. Like my mum died a week before my A levels, and then my dad died like 2 weeks before my university finals. I was like,
Man.
guys, can we? Do we have to? um, but I think doing those exams and doing well, I think on the one hand, like meant that I actually kind of suppressed quite a lot of feelings of grief and stuff because I just had to, from a functional perspective, to get through the exams. But I think it's also meant that I sort of have, I know I have sort of a well that I can draw on of sort of mental strength. I'm like, gosh, if I was able to do that, then, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Did you have a chance, or do you think your parents knew? Did you have a chance to come out to either of them? Was there any kind of sense they got to know you, your true authentic self?
I mean, I certainly didn't come out to my mum. But I also didn't have, well, I kind of had girlfriends-ish at school, but
Mm,
I didn't introduce my parents to any of them. I think it was, a plausible option, but I also don't think they like thought I was gay necessarily. Um, I think I definitely like, avoided, being camp or doing stuff that would make them or people or school friends think I was gay. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, and then my dad, yeah, so my dad was ill. I mean, he was just deeply, deeply depressed after my mum died and sort of developed a bit of a psychotic depression. And so actually in the spring, just a couple of months before he passed away, I was going to, uh, I came out to my siblings and I was like, should I tell dad? And they were kind of like, well, uh, they didn't say don't, but they were like, I don't, you probably won't get what you want out of it. And he wasn't really communicating much at all.
Right.
And yeah, to an extent, it was, my older brother was also like, there was a little bit of he has enough on his plate at the moment. As if
Okay.
I don't think hearing that I'm gay is gonna like. I think if his issue is, his wife of 40 years has passed away, I'm not sure hearing that I'm gay is gonna like shift the dial in either direction. But I get it. I don't hold like a grudge on that. But that like quite humorously from a sort of slapstick perspective, my boyfriend came to stay at the family home that my dad was living in, but was kind of he just kept himself to himself. So I had to tell him that like a friend was staying like for a week in my bedroom. But whatever. So probably possibly he had his suspicions, if you like.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think, it's already come out in this conversation, comedy can be a really powerful tool for coping. And in your case, I'm curious to know about your journey into comedy, but then do you think humor and your comedy work has helped you through the grief process? Because you mentioned you feel like you repressed a lot of it. Has comedy helped you come to terms with that and work through it?
Yeah, definitely. I think talking about it on stage, but I mean also like, you know, the comedy, obviously comedy that happens on stage is only a tiny portion of what you of comedy as an outlet. All of us are this is gonna sound so naff. All of us are comedians. No, but just like, obviously yeah, I quite early on I used comedy as a way to talk about it
Yeah.
um, to friends and so on. Because, yeah, it's so overwhelming that, you know, there's obviously a time to be sad about it, but it is also just a part of life.
Yeah.
And and so, you know, and like all other parts of life, you've got to be able to laugh about it. Um, and I think, particularly with like friends, my school friends and stuff, I think they were brilliant and have always been wonderful. I think because, it almost in any circle, it's quite unusual to lose two parents in that quite short space of time, and both by the age of 21. But I think there was a oh, this is too so serious, we can't joke about it. So I think like allowing that is, was good. Yeah.
Yeah. When do you think then, let's talk about kind of your journey into comedy. When did you realize comedy was something you wanted to pursue as a career? And then I'm also curious as to the role your kind of queerness has played in your performance and your kind of decision to get into comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I have quite a sort of a mixed entrance into it. I think the moment I can like remember the moment I decided I wanted to. I was on holiday with that same boyfriend. It's like full 10 years ago now, and my dad had just died, and I was like, oh, like, I mean, I guess at the time my path would have been into sort of corporate jobs ish. Um, like most of my friends are in, and kind of siblings and family, and I was like, actually, like life is really, really short, and my dad probably only did something he was passionate about in like the last 10 years of his life. And so I was like, let's let's give it a go and see. And so I stayed on for another year at uni and got into like the University Comedy Society,
Okay.
and then kind of my early stabs at it and like the London open mic scene and stuff were like relatively unsuccessful. And so I actually sort of stopped. I was a teacher in like the late 2010s and did actually get fired, to be fair.
Okay.
And then kind of when I was fired, it was for pulling sickies. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay.
There's,
You're like, I need
there's
a new career.
there's nothing to worry about. Yeah, kind of when I got fired just on the eve of the pandemic, I was like, okay, well, you know, why don't you give it kind of give it a proper go? And yeah, so I started tutoring and doing stand up, and then the pandemic I started doing like skits on social media and kind of grew a bit of a following, and then I think that increased my confidence in stand up. and the both kind of fed into one another, because I think it's confidence in yourself is probably the most important asset in this game.
Yeah, to stand up on stage and kind of just like hope people laugh at what you're about to say must be kind of terrifying.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's just confidence in yourself. Can I, am I good? Can I keep writing good stuff? Will
Yeah.
I write that 10 minutes I need for the show over the next month? All of that kind of stuff, because you're going to get knocked back time and time again by the industry and whatever it is, and by your own kind of self doubts. So yeah, I think just like being convinced that you're hilarious is is really important.
Yeah. And as far as kind of like you yourself and in your kind of your queerness and your authenticity around that, do you ever feel the need to kind of edit yourself or exaggerate your queerness depending on the audience or the kind of the situation?
I think I um I don't think I do. I think I'm relatively like me on stage. Um and I think like my persona on stage is probably like sort of gay but likes football or whatever.
Okay.
Um, and I think that has been helpful, certainly in the environments that I came up through comedy wise. There's sort of like gong shows where it was, useful to be able to tease straight guys in the audience and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't necessarily feel the need to edit myself. I do feel the pressure and actually the desire, and whether that's like my own desire or what I feel like the industry reflecting back to me, desire to like talk about being gay less,
Okay.
and you know do a show about something else or whatever. Um, but I think anyone with like a, let's say, an identity badge feels that after their sort of debut show, which is often about that. They're like, okay, that's the industry's bored of that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you talk about teasing a straight guy. You took your show, I Need a Straight Guy, on the road in May and June. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was great. It was really cool. It's such a crazy privilege to be doing a tour. And sort of, yeah, you know, you don't ever think that you'll get to that stage. So it was really cool. Had just lovely, lovely audiences. Um, what's my favorite? Maybe Cardiff. Cardiff was wicked, just so good.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I think like one thing you have to get used to in this game is that like by the end of that process of building a show, you are pretty bored of your own show.
Right. Okay.
uh, just because you've done it a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'd done it 30 times the year before in Edinburgh, and it had been worked in progress over the previous sort of 2 years. So you're a bit like, okay, like how do I breathe life into this? How do I remember that it's like the audience's first time seeing it? How do I sort of,
Yeah.
you know, so that's an interesting challenge. But I think yeah, probably by that stage, your favorite parts of the show are like random moments of audience interaction that really
Mm,
bring the show to life. You just always, particularly that show had like inbuilt audience interaction, like with a straight guy.
yeah.
Um, so those bits were always really funny because it's like something different and something new each show.
Yeah. That does sound cool. And I think, my perception, someone who's never been a comedian, never going to go on tour as a comedian, it feels like comedy often does mean kind of life on the road. And when you were kind of touring that show and when you were in Edinburgh, how does that lifestyle kind of impact you personally? And then how do you kind of stay grounded in yourself when you are kind of traveling in Edinburgh or traveling around kind of the country doing the shows?
Yeah, I think it's hard, and it's I think you know, why quite a lot of comedians really drink too much. I think also why quite a lot of comedians are teetotal because they're like, oh God, if I'm going to stay in this game, I need these like boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's hard. It can be hard to establish like a healthy like routine and stuff. I mean, like for me personally, most of my gigs are in London. You know, maybe like one weekend a month, 1 to 2 weekends a month, I might be around the country. Um, and I mean, my tour, by all standards, was still relatively small. It was only like 11 dates. So I'm not like on the road, you know, a kind of crazy amount. But I can imagine, yeah, once you're whatever at Gamble and you're doing sort of, 200 date tours, staying in hotels all the time and just in your car a lot, it's, yeah, hard to sort of build a routine and stick to it, basically.
Yeah. Well, maybe that is the life to follow for you
Yeah.
as kind of success continues to build. Um, One of the things I really admire about you is that you've used your platform on social media to talk about causes that you care about and issues in kind of the global climate that you care about. How do you kind of approach speaking up on those topics? Has there ever been any pressure for you to either speak up or stay quiet, or have you kind of had the ability to kind of do what you feel is best in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've always done, um, what I feel is right, what I feel passionate about. Um, obviously, particularly with Gaza over the last 2 years, I mean, maybe less so now that the penny has finally dropped for in big institutions and so on. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, in something like brand work, for example, it felt like having, Free Palestine in my bio and speaking out about it a lot was um, probably, probably it meant I was a sort of no go for quite a lot of brands, but you know, such is life. And I think when stuff's important to you and you look back and you think like, how could I have done nothing? Then,
Mhm.
then yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't regret it for sure.
No. I think it's incredibly important. And as someone who kind of has admired your work and admired kind of the presence you have online, I think it is amazing that you've kind of used your
Thank
platform
you.
to speak up on that. Obviously, Edinburgh Fringe, recent tour. Kind of what's next for you from a kind of a comedy perspective?
Yeah, I think at the moment I'm going to take a little bit of a break from stand up just to sort of kind of refresh myself and maybe come at it with some new ideas and a sort of fresh perspective in the new year. Um and so I think now is really like the way that kind of comedy or the industry sort of works, quote unquote, is you sort of build towards this kind of debut show.
Mhm.
Um and then afterwards it can feel a little bit, which is where I am now, of sort of like what is actually next? What do I want to focus on? Do I want to build towards another show? Do I want to be someone who sort of churns out like a show every year or every 2 years or something? Or, am I going to focus on online? Am I going to write a book? Am I going to, so all of these things. So I think actually, to be honest with you, at the moment, I'm just taking a little bit of time to work out sort of what is next for me, basically. Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I think, we all need those moments where we kind of reset, kind of rethink through kind of what we want to focus on and where we want to focus our time. We started this conversation talking about your younger self, young Mark. So I want to revisit him.
hmm
If you could give him one piece of advice, what would it be? And would it be different if I said, what advice would you give to a young LGBTQ plus person today?
Yeah, I think my advice to me would definitely have been just come out on your first day of uni instead of instead
Yeah.
of because I went to a really queer uni. Like I
Okay.
could
So
have,
you could have had a lot of fun.
yeah, exactly. I think I missed out on 2.5 years of fun. Um, I also, yeah, I don't regret not coming out of school. I don't think my all male school friends or I were really equipped with the right language to kind of discuss that. Um, And yeah, I think kind of the same. I think for young LGBT people, obviously if it's sort of safe to do so, and at the moment that's kind of up in the air. But yeah, um, come out as soon as you can if you can. It's obviously really sad that like the landscape has changed a lot in the 10 years since I came out. And obviously I think we believe that we're on this sort of unending arc of justice, but in reality, we're not. Things go back and forwards and back and forwards, and at the moment it feels like we're on the way back, which is sad.
Yeah, I've heard it described as a pendulum and it swings back and forth, and you just got to hope that we are kind of on that swing back right now, but when we swing it back forward, we swing it further and harder than we did before. So we can only hope. And obviously, it's people like you who are out there kind of bringing incredible awareness and having kind of putting comedy at the center of everything, but also kind of with like a really important message and just good representation is super, super important. Mark, thank you so much for being on Queer Talker with me today. It's been incredible to learn more about you. We will look out for news in 2026 of more to come from you. But thank you so much for being on Queer Talker with me today.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.